You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. The Halloween franchise. Halloween 3. Season of the Witch.
Dissecting them one screen legend and franchise at a time. Our podcast subject for this episode is dedicated to the Halloween franchise with its second sequel, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, aka the one without Myers. In order to successfully do this, I do need a team of horror aficionados to form the surgical team each episode. There's first up, yours truly, Paul Farrell, the lead surgeon and host for the series of this podcast. Joining me each episode at the operating theatre of the Halloween franchise discussions is Chief Surgical Technician Ben Skinner.
Hello.
Hi. So you really are tuning Ant's kind of musical kind of... Do you realise that...
I've got to say,
Go on.
I've heard this before I actually watched the film, and I just kept thinking, like, this is from, like, a kid's film or something.
Yeah.
Like, you know, maybe it's a Tim Burton Nightmare Before Christmas kind of thing.
Sure.
And then to find out that it was in this film of all films.
Yeah.
Which I think probably not many people have seen.
No. And I was going to we'll probably come to that.
But it sticks in your head.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. So well, let's talk around that actually now, because, you know, this movie, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982, was the release. So it was the following year of Halloween 2, year after.
Yep.
Its purpose was to start an anthology of Halloween movies, taking on a different theme with each movie and moving away from the Myers saga. Now, anthologies are like hot property kind of thing right now. Everyone's doing anthologies.
Doesn't always work.
True
Detective Season 2.
Exactly.
Case in point.
But you see it with American Horror Story and, you know, those kind of things. So, and Fargo are good examples of continuing
Fargo's great.
That kind of stuff. So, I'm not expecting to answer this question now, but I want to by the end of this podcast. Mm-hmm. Were they ahead of their time with the anthology kind of thing, you know, because it was a bit of a misbeat in this instance for when it was released, because the movie itself would move more into kind of a witchcraft area of storytelling, I think it's fair to say, and it was centered on a couple who investigate a businessman called Cochrane and his Silver Shamrock Novelties company.
Mr.
Cochrane. It would have longtime collaborator of Carpenter, Tommy Lee Wallace, taking on the directorial duties. It's his first instance of this, his debut film. He would serve as art director for The Dark Star, and it was editor on the original Halloween movie, to kind of give you an idea of how he was in the Carpenter encampment of movie producing. As director, he would then go on to steer 3 episodes of the Twilight movie series. He would helm Fright Night Part 2. He, interestingly, was the director behind It, the miniseries. And the next chapter in Carpenter's Vampires movie entitled Vampires Los Muertos. As far as our original kind of writers are concerned, Deborah Hill and Carpenter would be on as producers, and the latter would even serve as an uncredited writer for this. Upon release, Halloween 3 was a failure at the box office, and something of a disappointment among fans to see Myers resurrected hoping to see Myers resurrected from the flames like a phoenix from the ashes from its previous installment. But in recent years, the film has become something of a cult, serving in its own right, with a lot of fans applauding it, and has become more appreciated because of that.
It's like the On Her Majesty's Secret Service of the Halloween franchise.
It's kind of, I've written here, like it's almost like that distant cousin that you used to mock as a kid, only to realise that when you grow up they're a lot smarter than you first thought. Yeah. So my question is, and hopefully we'll answer this, Ben, by the end of it, hopefully, does it deserve the mantle of cult film? Does it sour the Halloween film franchise? And the only way to do that is to dissect it, to find out.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. That's why we're here. Let's get the dissection on.
Shit.
So So go back to what you were just saying though. Before we do the dissection, though, what did you know, or what had you heard of it prior to watching this movie?
Well, so basically hearing that song and having someone explain to me what it was from and the plot of this film, and it just sounded just batshit crazy. I'm like, are you sure that was like a Halloween film?
Yeah.
So I think coming into this, I'm glad I had that backstory.
Yes.
I knew what to expect. I knew it would be a departure.
Yes, okay.
I also was waiting to see where the witch would come in.
Yeah.
And the title is a little misleading in some ways.
I think that too, because people write it up as a witchcraft storytelling, right? And even I've introduced it as that because that's what they say about it. But I disagree with that. I don't think it is.
Even the poster, I'm just looking at the poster right now, and it's very, it doesn't give the impression of what the film actually is at all.
So for me, if it was meant to deviate away from that, I think, and going off the poster image, I would have said that sounds like a really cool concept.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do that. It goes in a very different direction, which we'll talk about.
But yeah, I mean, it does have, if you're talking about, the theme of Halloween, trick-or-treating is obviously the main focus of it. And it goes back to the origins of Halloween and things like that.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
I didn't see a witch at any point.
No, I didn't see a witch. Unless they're meant to be... Is Cochrane a witch? Or is the... Spoilers, the slab of rock thing of mystical proportions.
To, ancient times, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, look, this is our purpose. We're going to go through and talk about the movie in a bit of a narrative form, and we'll kind of comment along the way, and hopefully answer those questions at the end of it. We'll see. Hopefully we will. You reckon we will? That's a confident backup.
We're professionals.
We are professionals.
I'm not leading you down. I'm not Damon Lindelof. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
All set up, no payoff.
Okay, so what I try and do for new listeners out there is break this up into 3 acts. We talk about the first act, the middle act, and the climax of the movie. So let's look at the first act, the setup, if you will. We're treated with this kind of flickering image again of the jack-o'-lantern. In our last podcast, we wanted to pay particular notice of that theme.
Yeah.
Running through it, okay? So it does remind us that we are definitely still in the Halloween universe. Does it do it successfily, though, or not?
Well, it's a bit different because we don't have the theme.
We don't have the
theme.
No.
So it's got a different vibe.
Yeah, it does. It does. So I don't know. Payoff? Yes, it's there to serve that we are in a Halloween universe, but I don't know if it... I wonder if it hinders it, to be honest. And that's one of the things people have spoken about with this movie, is that it definitely it should never have been part of the Halloween canon. It should have just been a film on its own right.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll discuss that as we go through too. We're told for the first time in the franchise that where we find ourselves a week out from Halloween, so the date's the 23rd, Saturday 23rd. There's a guy running down the street. There's a car in pursuit. He bumps into this guy in a suit. There's a struggle that ensues. Leads to the suit man becoming a car sandwich as he's crushed between 2 junk cars in the scrapyard, which is kind of a nice scene. Then an hour later, at the petrol station, in something that's a bit reminiscent of Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, I got that vibe.
The attendant's watching the TV and he sees the commercial of the music that you were just playing in our intro.
You mean this? I won't fall for that trick. It's a quick way of getting people to tune out.
Yeah. Stay tuned, folks. So the commercials of the Silver Shamrock novelties, and we get the the 3 glow in the dark masks that you can buy. So there's the witch, the pumpkin, and the skeleton kind of mask. The guy who was being pursued then suddenly jumps out and collapses and declares they're coming. We then meet our lead protagonist in a different scene, Dr. Daniel Chalice, played by Tom Atkins of The Fog.
Yeah.
Which we've spoken about in a previous podcast. He arrives at his young kid's house. We learn that he's separated from his wife. And the kids one has a skeleton mask on, and the other has the witch mask on, from what we've seen from the commercial. Daniel's then called into a hospital. So, as I said, he's a doctor. And he then meets... Damn it, man, I'm a doctor, not a dentist. I said that in the last one. I'm so misquoting that. Where am I getting that from? Anyway, I'm a dentist, not a doctor.
It sounds right to me.
Where the guy being pursued is brought into the hospital. So the guy we saw in the opening. There's a suited man that's... so the guy is actually kind of ranting still, saying, they're going to kill us. and there's a suited man that's kind of watching the hospital at this point too. Daniel, our protagonist, takes a nap in the staff room, and whilst he does so, the suited man sees his opportunity, comes into the hospital, and he basically sneaks into the patient's room of the guy that was being pursued, and he gouges his eyes out. Kills him. Like that.
It's a bad way to go.
It is a bad way to go. Nasty. Actually, it's quite a good shot, that too. Finger gouging always looks quite
good. Yeah, it does. It makes you squirm.
It does. Nasty. So then Daniel wakes up to the screaming that he hears in the hospital, and he runs after the suited guy, who then goes outside, sets himself on fire, climbs into a car, and the car blows up.
This is the theme that's emerging in the series also.
It is.
We need to keep a lookout for this. Because obviously in the last film we had Michael Myers... Well, what they thought was Michael Myers went up in flames in the first 5 minutes or so.
That's it.
But this was a little more intentional on the...
On the guy's part, yes.
But no one seems to be too concerned.
No, they don't. And even like the next bit I've said here, like just to round out our first act intro, Daniel's act is to call up his ex-wife to say that he'll have to look after the kids the following weekend, and then he sees the pumpkin mask in the patient's room, and that kind of rounds out our opening, if you will, to set the premise up.
Pause, and then there's one of those musical notes like do 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 do.
Yeah, that's it. Nicely done.
Yeah, the plot thickens.
So does that by even your description of it, it kind of feels like a TV thing? And even like after I'd written these notes up, and I haven't put it in here, but I was kind of thinking about it afterwards, and I thought it does remind me a little bit of an episode of Goosebumps, yeah, or Twilight Zone, or The Outer Limits.
Yeah.
That kind of feel to it, you know. And it's interesting that he's got in his credits, the director Tommy Lee Wallace went on to do 3 episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I did. I couldn't shake that feeling throughout. It was like a movie of the week kind of thing.
Yeah, which kind of
and it didn't have that cinematic, that look about it, because even Halloween 2 is shot in the widescreen, super widescreen format.
That's right.
This was just normal widescreen. So
yeah. So it does have this weird kind of feel to it when you're watching it. And you were saying something as well about the. With the car blowing up kind of thing, like a continuing theme. Yeah,
see, that's completely unwarranted at this point. We have seen it in two of the films. I don't know if it's turning into a foot fetish or not at this point.
I also found like with and it will become a bit clearer as it went on. But let me put it out there as something to think about as we then discuss through the next stage about how it was. I got a feeling that this was almost like an estranged cousin. I'm using that metaphor again. An estranged cousin to They Live. And we'll get to the reason why I think that as the plot develops down the track. Okay, so then we get to the middle act. I'm calling this the investigation. This is where we'll get Daniel going off to kind of find out more about what's been going on.
He likes to put in the detective shoes, doesn't he?
So before he does that, though, he meets the pursued guy, the guy that's just died with eyes being gouged out. He meets his daughter, a certain Ellie Groombridge, played by Stacey Nelkin. She arrives on the scene at the hospital, and Daniel basically sees Ellie crying, but he just walks on. He don't give no shit.
No. He's got a mustache.
He's just got a mustache. Yeah, why would he?
That's what he wants.
Yep. He's at the coroner's office, though, where we do pick up him investigating. It's now Wednesday the 27th. He asked the coroner to look more into the case for him, essentially. So he's got this other chick on the side who he has a bit of flirty with ongoing, albeit via phone. He goes to a bar, and the Silver Shamrock ad plays again in the background. Ellie turns up at the bar, and she thanks him for attending her father's funeral. Daniel shares her father's last moments with her, so he kind of just divulges about what he witnessed. Sensing something amiss, the two of them then go to her father's store, where Ellie reads her father's journal. His last trip, they discover, was to Silver Shamrock Novelties warehouse or factory. So they choose to investigate it further. At which point the TVs at the store flicker to life with the Shamrock ad again playing, telling us that there's only 2 days left to Halloween. So not only is the ad is annoying, let's face it, it's an annoying ad, but it also serves as a bit of a time ticker as we're starting to get closer, because each ad is a day closer to Halloween.
It's a good tune. I'm not knocking the tune. I think it's probably going to be my next ringtone for about a day.
For maybe an hour.
Before my head actually explodes.
This kind of leads them to think, right, well, you need to investigate this warehouse. Let's go check it out. When they arrive at the town, they're pretty much treated like outsiders, a la Western of American West kind of scenario. They check into a motel. They see a car arrive owned by the mysterious Cochran, owner of the Silver Shamrock novelties. And they also meet a family who arrive in a Winnebago that are like your typical
American tourists.
That's it. We also meet another woman who checks in the motel, and she's basically cursing the factory, kind of having a go.
She's like, this hellhole, and it does look like a bit of a shithole.
It does. It's a pretty shitty motel, isn't it? As well,
there's some shit motels you see.
Yeah.
If you travel through America, you'll see the motor lodges, but this is the kind of place you go to have an affair. Like,
is it?
Well,
cool. Right. I'll make a note of that then.
The hotel has this kind of...
it's out of the back, isn't it? It's not,
It's convenient, really, for this guy.
For this guy, yeah, that's right. And we'll come to that because... it's at this point here. So Daniel... It's a good segue. Daniel asks Ellie where she wants to sleep. Inevitably, they kiss, and once again, Tom Atkins struts his stuff on screen.
Tom Atkins comes through with the goods.
He's a ladies' man.
I don't see the attraction. But...
Yeah, well, he's done it again. That we also learn there's a 6 o'clock curfew, and the streets are kind of empty as night falls, and there's security cameras surveying the scene, so they're definitely on watch, Big Brother style. Yeah. We find out from a passing drunk that all of the employees of the factory were brought there by Cochran, so the everyman has had to struggle, to get a job there. He threatens to burn down the factory, at which point 2 guys in suits appear, and one of them rips the drunk guy's head off.
Yeah.
In a pretty gruesome fashion.
We've all been there.
We have.
We've all felt like doing it. He just went and did it.
He just yeah. So again, we get these suited guy kind of people cropping up as a bit of like, surveillance kind of guys that are on the scene. We cut back to the cursing woman now at this point, who is in her hotel room. The commercial comes on her TV. She sees a silver shamrock pendant on the floor, which has come off one of the masks. And she also notices that on the back there's a chip on it. So she starts
microchip,
microchip,
not a Dorito.
Not a Dorito. Oh yeah, good point. Microchip on the back, and then she eats it. No.
Movie over.
It's done. So she noticed this microchip, so she does the foolish thing of fiddling around with it.
What would you do that? Would you, if you saw a microchip, would your first instinct, whoa, microchip?
I wonder what this does.
Yeah.
And the consequence of it is that she's blasted in the eyes with a laser.
She had it coming.
You love that. Are you a secret fan of Chicago? I think you are.
We've got to be consistent.
We do. So basically then, the result of that is that these people in lab coats turn up and take the lady away. Mr. Cochran turns up on the scene, and he ensures Daniel and Ellie that the lady in question will be taken care of.
I would have kept the mystique.
Take care of her.
I would have kept the mystique about Mr. Cochran
for a bit longer than that.
A little bit longer.
Right. Turns out
jumps out of limb. Oh, I thought this guy was meant to be like the big reveal.
Yeah, that's right.
But
no.
Unless I'm like, maybe this isn't the real guy. Maybe this is like a.
Maybe he's not though.
Yeah.
Is he the real guy?
Well, I mean,
we'll talk about that.
Led to believe he is.
Yeah, we are led to believe he is. We are now told it's Saturday the 30th, as then Daniel calls up his coroner friend, friend, and asks her to look into Cochran for him, because he thinks the guy's sus. At which point it's revealed that the room is bugged. Ugh. Daniel and Ellie then go on a tour of the factory, and we learn that Cochran has been in the toy-making business for years. There are also some ominous men standing around. Ellie then sees her father's car, which makes things a little more sus. Why did they have his car? Daniel thinks that they should call in the Marines, but he decides to call the police instead, which I thought was interesting. But so he does this whilst Ellie packs the things because they're going to try and go and leave. Daniel's attempts to call the police, though, are blocked, and when he returns to the motel room, there's no sign of Ellie. He sees her being transported to the factory, so he goes in pursuit, breaks into the factory. All the time, the cameras are watching his every move. He finds a room with an old lady knitting, But when he demands to know where Ellie is, it's revealed that she's an android. Oh my god!
Straight out of Westworld.
Yeah, relevant.
Well, it's relevant depending on when people are listening to this podcast.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
It's apparent though that robots in film and TV have come a long way since then.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah.
Daniel is attacked by a guy at this point, but he's able to defeat him, and which in the process discovers that he too is a robot. When Daniel thrusts his hand into his stomach.
Yeah, that's the ultimate. That's the best.
Despite his efforts, Daniel is cornered by two guys, and Cochrane turns up, and that rounds out our middle act.
Bum, bum, bum.
Thoughts on where this narration's taken us at this point. So it's kind of a lot of kind of
Village of the Damned.
Yeah. Secret Society.
Yeah.
Robots in the world, which is again why I was talking about They Live.
Oh,
as well,
definitely They Live. I mean, yeah, I think
because I mentioned that because John Carpenter is an uncredited writer on this. I don't know how much involvement he had in the writing of it, but if it was his seed of an idea about this being it, and They Live comes a couple of years after the fact, it might be just a kernel of something that he was playing around with, and then does a better version of it down the track.
But I mean, he's done that before, hasn't he?
Yeah,
like he's toyed with. There's story elements that you see in earlier films that end up in later films.
Yeah, that's right.
Whether it's like Escape.
Escape from New York.
I mean, there's stuff in Precinct 13, which ends up in that, and I'm not sure if Dark Star.
No, Dark Star is its own entity.
Yeah.
I think because with Dark Star, and even though that preceded stuff, I think because of his collaboration with Dan O'Bannon on that one, I think you really got to look at
where Dan O'Bannon went next.
Dan O'Bannon went next, which is obviously Alien. Yeah. But then John Carpenter then picked up with Assault on Precinct 13. So I think when you look at John Carpenter's, if you're looking at his written work, you really got to pick it up from Assault on Precinct 13 onwards.
We've said this before. I mean, this is more like summarising, going into John Carpenter's career again. But he definitely knows when not to do sequels, doesn't he? Like he knows when to establish franchise and then move on.
Well, here's the thing, like it was Deborah Hill and his idea to go, well, no, let's put. They didn't even want a Halloween 2. They didn't expect a Halloween 2, so they wrote a Halloween 2 anyway.
Obviously, it was successful.
It was successful, but then that was to them where we've left with Halloween as a franchise. Myers is dead. Gulf of Flames. Yeah. Loomis is dead. Gulf of Flames. So
clearly comes out of
so they're like, well, let's pick. If people want a Halloween movie, let's take them in this direction. Let's pick up on what originally got us excited about Halloween and making Halloween a scary thing again. So let's use this as a different story to go down.
It's almost like with the men, the figures. They've just taken Michael Myers and times him by
That's true.
Which makes it less menacing, but.
Because you can destroy them too. They're quite, and even the climax of the film, they're quite easily destroyed.
Yeah, in the end they are. Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it? From when to hit on that note, is there anything scary that's happening in this? It's more about mystery, isn't it? It's a mystery kind of thriller. It's not.
I wasn't scared at all.
No.
But it was less about those jump moments. I think they try towards the end. I think a bit.
Yeah.
The unexpected keeps happening.
That's true.
Talk about that, but. Just with this element of like the mystery behind the small town kind of thing, traditionally that is something you see in a serialized like TV.
So in a way, to kind of follow up on what you just said there with the village thing, it's like we've seen it recently with the serialized thing with Wayward Pines, that has come out and arguably done well or not, but you kind of what they did to their credit of that series is the mystery kind of part of it was really kind of explored to the nth degree on that one.
Yeah.
So whether are we saying this would have served better as a mini series to kind of flesh it out a bit more, or is that killer song too much to bear to have in a bit of a series?
You couldn't play it any more, could you? Than it already is. Like they really thrash it.
Yeah.
But there is, it does. There is a bit of a payoff with that, though, at least.
Yeah, that's true.
That does have a payoff.
That's true. Okay.
We do see what the point of it was.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Which is probably where the true horror comes in.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go on to that. Let's talk about the final act. So it's now the morning of October 31. Daniel is led into a basement where it's revealed that a lot of scientists are either staring at a computer screens or at this giant slab of rock. Right? Bear with me. We are still talking about Halloween. Some of the scientists are using samples of this rock and they put it into the Halloween masks.
I don't know how it works exactly.
No, exactly. There's a lot of masks being made.
Take his word for it.
Yeah.
We
discover that Ellie is in another room, tied to a stretcher, and the Winnebago family are shown into this room, which is revealed to be test room A. The Shamrock commercial comes on, and the kid of the family goes and puts on a pumpkin mask. He starts to squirm, collapses to the floor, and a load of bugs and snakes then start coming out of the kid's head as it kind of dissolves into this pulp. I quite like that scene.
Yeah, I think that's the standout scene. Of the
yeah,
film,
I agree. Yeah,
I think it's disturbing enough that this, if it was on TV, this probably would have been the scene that they would have cut back on, or
I kind of exactly. That's right.
In some way.
Because the whole kind of idea of having your head crushed and then smothered is the daunting part of it, isn't it? Because he can't get this mask off.
Yeah. But presumably that is what would happen to every kid that put the mask on.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, if they had, if it did get to that point, that'd be pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
If they ever shot a scene like that.
Mass distribution of it. Actually, do you know what? Because there was a film came out recently called Tales of Halloween.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like lots of little short stories, and Rob Marshall does the last installment of it.
Yeah.
And there's a series of these pumpkin masks that kind of go out and they take life form of their own. It's very reminiscent of this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And done in a lot more, obviously he's got a bit more kind of visual bang for his buck up his sleeve to make it a bit more believable. And it's got elements in there of, he's definitely nodding to, I know we're deviating off this, but it kind of is relevant because there's a definite nod to Carpenter 2 with the whole Assault on Precinct 13 kind of scenario, because of you have to watch that section for it to make sense, but you have this small group essentially that are faced with this daunting task of trying to save the world.
No, I definitely think this scene, it pushes it just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
you're not expecting it. I think that's why I perked me up a little bit
when you saw that bit. Cool, because the result of it is obviously you've got the wife and father in there. The wife basically faints, and then the snacks then start to kind of attack the husband, who collapses to the ground. So it's for me, it was a bit of a weak end to that scene.
Yeah.
It would have been kind of cool I think nowadays with a bit more budget, you would have seen a bit more.
Because I didn't quite understand what was happening to them. I knew the kid was getting fucked up.
yeah, that's right.
Dying from anguish, or
no, I got the impression that the snakes attacked them.
Yeah, eventually, but they're just like,
oh my god, what's going on? Okay, so then we get this thing so they have this scenario of then cutting to outside of the factory and seeing kids across America buying these Halloween masks en masse. So we're kind of, as you were alluding to, Ben, foreshadowing what could come if they don't put a stop to this.
Yeah.
So the coroner scientist friend of Dan's tries to call him up without success. As she studies one of the Halloween masks, a suited guy turns up, picks up a drill, and then he attacks and kills her. And another pretty gruesome scenario. Yeah. So up in the ante of the death scenarios, which is kind of nice.
We waited a while for it, but
we did.
Getting there. Shit gets real.
Back at the factory, Dan is tied to a chair. Cochran starts doing the usual kind of villain of the piece, kind of talking about his glorified plans, before then putting a skeleton mask on Dan and then putting the TV on and showing the Halloween movie, the original Halloween movie.
Very, very interesting. It's not the first time that I showed it in the film.
No, that's right. But for me, I would have preferred to have not done that. And the reason, I know it's trying to do a bit of a self nod to it, to the franchise within it, but I would argue that if you're going to do something that lives within the Halloween franchise and that world, you wouldn't refer to it in that sense. You could probably refer to an existing Laurie Strode, Michael Myers, and Sam Loomis within that world. So those characters would exist. You could probably do a nod to those, but I wouldn't have the movie playing.
They must have decided at some point that this was a movie that existed outside of.
Exactly, yeah.
But I mean, so this would be the only Halloween film that exists in this particular world.
Correct.
We went back to the Michael Myers world.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's interesting.
Like how Tarantino says that he. I think I bring up Tarantino.
Yeah.
But yeah, he explains that some of his films are within a certain universe, and some of them, like Kill Bill, is its own thing.
Yes.
Kill Bill characters watch Tarantino films.
Yes.
So they will go and watch Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
which is just, I don't know if that's just him trying to because he does tend to talk out his ass a bit sometimes. Sometimes he makes shit up.
Yeah, God bless him. God bless him.
And makes up for inconsistencies within
the
Tarantino verse. But maybe this is them trying to do the same kind of thing. If this was successful enough, obviously they wanted to continue this trend. Or this was
that was the idea, yeah. They would go. So the next one, if this was a success, the idea was that the next one would have just been a completely different Halloween film story.
Right. So I wonder if they would continue that meta thing and just continue to, because it's almost like it. Which Freddy Krueger film was the one that went all meta? The one that
The New Nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Similarly,
is that what you mean?
Yeah, yes. But similarly, that film kind of was ahead of its time.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's right.
I think maybe it was a bit more successful at pushing the boundaries than this one.
I think so.
But yeah, it's interesting to think how early this was.
Yeah, well,
you get stuff like Deadpool coming out now, but
yeah,
at the time, the only reason it doesn't really work for me is because presumably the kids are meant to watch Halloween, and then stay tuned for the competition after Halloween airs on television.
Yeah.
And how many parents are going to let their kids watch Halloween anyway?
It's a good point. It's a good point.
If you really
want
to capture as many eyeballs as possible, wouldn't you
put it on
a bit more family friendly?
Daytime TV, like morning kids morning TV, when the cartoons are on. Yeah. That's right. Absolutely. Anyway, look, I think we'll put a pin in that because I want to touch on that at the end.
Yeah.
So just to kind of round out what happens in our movie, so Dan, he's able to free himself from his restraints. He smashes the TV in the process and escapes through the air vents. There's always air vents to escape from.
He MacGyver's the shit.
He does. He then finds Ellie and frees her also. They hide in the studio where the giant slab is of rock. And there's this comical moment where they hide behind the costumes as it gets moved across. I was like,
yeah. There's a few comical moments.
Yeah. And then Daniel discovers one of the pendant microchips on the floor, and he devises a plan. He climbs up into the rafters, tips a box of the pendant chips on the floor, and the androids then fuse out and collapse to the floor.
He's a smart cookie to think of this.
Yeah, he knew that they would do that.
Yeah,
anyway,
totally knew.
Cochrane looks on. He's a solitary figure. Then the slab of rock glows, and Cochrane applauds Daniel before being zapped and killed by the rock.
He's explained his entire plan to him, and now he's applauding. It's like he wanted to be caught.
I had enough being a villain.
Yeah.
It was a weird, did you find that a weird, he's our only source of being the antagonist.
Yeah.
And he's just off that easily by the very thing that source of power that's created.
He himself is not that dangerous.
No.
He's just an old fart.
He is.
With Shakespearean training. Sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if...
It's weird, isn't it?
I mean, there doesn't really seem to be... Past the point, there's not much danger present. You don't have no fear for the main characters, I don't think.
No, definitely not. So, basically, even then...
So the Rock is the villain.
The Rock is the villain.
Not the actual
Not
Rock.
Dwayne Johnson.
That would be something to say.
It is.
That would be way ahead of its time.
That would have been. Before he existed.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is. It's this weird entity thing, and that to me, it feels like more needed to be explored around that. This entity, this thing.
Yeah.
I know that you don't. There's a whole thing about the air of mystery, but you do need a bit of explanation behind mystery for it to be a mystery.
Yeah, it was very half-assed, I thought.
Yeah.
That whole explanation.
I know. So the result of it is the factory explodes, and Dan and Ellie are able to escape from it. Then, as they're driving away, there's this sudden moment where Ellie attacks Daniel. The car veers off the road and crashes into a tree, and it reveals that Ellie was a fembot all along.
But he did it with her.
So she then starts to attack him with one arm because the other arm's been dismembered, and she tries. At which point Daniel then grabs a wrench, smashes her head off with it. He climbs back into the car, but her dismembered arm then tries to strangle him. He pries himself free and then runs off into the night. At which point Dan then arrives at the same petrol station from the opening of the movie. He calls the police, but they won't listen to him, thinking he's just a nutter. The commercial clicks on the TV in the background, and he tells the attendant to turn off the TV. He then starts to shout, "Stop it! Stop it!" And he turns to the camera, still shouting and pleading, "Stop it!" as the credits roll. End of the movie.
Shit, son. That's how you end a movie right there.
What the hell just happened?
Black Sopranos ending. I checked to see if my DVD was busted.
It's kind of been noted about that ending as well, being a bit kind of a controversial ending. It does smack to me again of a Outer Limits Twilight Zone ending.
Yeah.
Where they kind of always leave it open and the protagonist left in disarray.
Yeah. How I mean, do you think that he is successful?
No, I don't, because all the masks has been shipped out.
Yeah.
So all these things are going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
My question, though, going back to Joe, let's take that pin back out when we were talking about earlier, because my question is, though, like you said, like, how successful is this so-called plan going to be? Because you're relying on the people that have bought the masks.
Yeah.
Not everyone goes out and would have bought those kind of masks, particularly when there's...
What? Wouldn't it be better to...
When there's a William Shatner, Michael Myers mask out there.
Yeah.
In existence.
Yeah.
You know, so like I don't know, like you were saying, it would have been better to have done it in front of like a kid's cartoon early morning.
But why does it need to be a video signal anyway? What kind of they just flick a switch and send out a
in the mask. Well, they've got the chip in there. I mean, we're obviously a lot more advanced in our technology these days from when the movie came out.
Yeah, in a way.
But
so, there's say like. Yeah, it has to be the most successful campaign in history if that commercials was able to. I mean, they must have paid a lot of money to get those spots because we now have valuable like television.
Oh yeah,
television time.
That's right.
And
so here's the other thing too. Like if that was the central warehouse where these things were being made, who's to say there aren't other? So this comes back to what I was saying about the Cochrane thing, right? So is he really the? Are there many Cochrans out there with many factories in existence, or is this the sole one? And if so, their supply chain would be having to be off the dial in order to produce that amount of
the distribution on this thing. There's more Cochrane trucks than there is FedEx trucks in America.
That's right.
It's a big operation, man. But,
yeah,
he's been planning it for years. So.
He's been planning it for years,
but it doesn't seem that like such a massive plan. Doesn't seem that...
it's not very well thought through if he's had all those years to...
He seems okay with it when it starts going belly up at the end. Maybe he knows it's still going to
going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. Like, yep.
I will say that the moment when she comes back multiple times and we find out she is in fact a fembot...
Yeah.
It gets comical. Like it starts
very comical.
Repeating the same thing like 3 times. Each time it just gets a little more ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's meant to be scary or there's filling out the running time. Because sometimes with these things...
So what are we... I want to say we're 2 years away from the Terminator being released.
Yeah.
And when you talk about that as far as... robots chasing, and topical again. Westworld, the movie, not the TV show, was made in the late 70s. So, and that involved you'll bring a kind of character stalking, and so that they were a lot more threatful, in their pose of attack than the Ellie, whatever her name was, fembot scenario kind of coming about.
I got like an Evil Dead. Like a comedy Evil Dead vibe. Like, when his wife's trying to... Like, it's just like the hand coming after him like that. But I don't know if it was meant to be comedy in this case.
I don't think it was meant to be. I could be wrong. But, it kind of felt like it was a It was kind of missed off.
Are we to believe that she was a fembot all along, right?
No, I don't think she was a fembot all along. I wrote that in there. I reckon when she was taken away by the factory, I think that's when it happened.
What kind of a procedure would do such? Like,
who would do the thing like that?
Oh, they shouldn't matter. They rip her skin off and like apply it.
See, I don't know. It's a good question. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean,
See,
it seems to me like it's a complicated procedure, but they're really she's not gone for that long.
No, she's not. So then, does that mean that she was a fembot all along? Which is a bit odd.
It's one of the biggest questions in film history. This is one that's posed quite often.
Yeah, we're not gonna lose any sleep over it, are we?
Dream of Electric Sheep.
It's all right, Ben. You'll get through it.
Get in touch with the director.
We should. Tommy.
Ridley Scott's answered the question.
He has.
Enough.
So let's. So what were your thoughts on the movie as a whole? Like, I studied about asking its place in the Halloween franchise. Where do you think it sits? I mean, it's very much a different beast.
Yeah, I'd probably, if you were going to do like a proper Halloween marathon, you'd skip this one.
Yeah.
And think of it as its own thing. I don't think it neither succeeds as like a ahead of its time anthology film, nor as a Halloween film. It's kind of like sits somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's aspects of it that I thought were quite cool. And like ballsy, obviously, like for the time. Yeah. But because of that whole flat feel of like not daytime, just a movie of the week.
Yeah.
Feel.
Yeah.
It just cheapens it. It cheapens it a bit, I think.
It does a bit, and you kind of are.
And they sort of like wedge things in, like, you know, the romance subplot. There's no reason why she would be attracted to this man.
It's weird, isn't it?
Middle-aged alcoholic dude. Who's just stuck
wait. We're talking about Tom Atkins here. Come on.
Stuck in a seedy hotel room with him, and she's just like.
You're telling me you wouldn't be tempted, Ben?
She just jumps in.
She does.
Look, a mustache does go a long way. But
it does.
He's no Tom Selleck, you know.
He's no Tom Selleck.
If you're going to go someone with a mustache, you're going to go Tom.
That's it. It's just a different Tom in this instance.
Yeah.
The wrong Tom.
Yeah.
So look, well, what about its place as a cult movie though? Because obviously we're talking about it being a standalone. So ignoring the Halloween franchise part of it, it has got its own cult following and cult status. Do you see merit in that or not?
Yeah, I can see why people would think that, but I think a cult movie has to be like enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to picture this playing at a midnight screening, and I can't. Yeah. I think the audience would get very bored very quickly.
Yeah.
That the song is.
You couldn't even have a sing along. You couldn't have a sing along with it, could you?
Maybe there's a game you can play along with if you're interested. But
yeah.
Apart from like whooping and hollering when the sex scene happens and the obligatory nudity.
Yes.
Although it's only partial nudity, isn't it?
It is partial nudity. It's kind of screened. Yeah.
That's definitely sandwiched in there as well. But I don't think there's enough here to. It's neither like ridiculous enough to make it funny.
Yeah.
Or it's definitely not scary enough.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, that's why I say about the cult status thing, because like, for me, it hasn't got that kind of right tone to sit anywhere to make it worthy of what I deem cult status.
No.
It is, yes, agreed, its own entity, but to elevate it to cult.
I mean, cult, that kind of assumes that what it's saying is that it wasn't appreciated at the time, but it is now. Like, people at the time didn't appreciate. But I think they were right to not appreciate it at the time.
Yeah, I agree with that. Too, because like if you're going in there expecting another Halloween film, you definitely didn't get what you expected. And those that might be wanting to watch these, back to back, or however you want to consume the Halloween franchise, you need to be warned that it definitely isn't that beast. Yeah. And so,
I'm trying to think: is there a modern film that has like kind of fallen? The same things happen to him. Like Cabin in the Woods. That got really shafted at the cinema, and that
that's
became
true.
Respected, like on home video. Like people really embraced that film.
Yeah,
and that was one that twisted. It appeared to be one thing.
Yes,
turned out to be something completely different.
It would be like going to see Fast and the Furious, right? The next installment of Fast and the Furious, and it not having anything to do.
If you're talking in franchise. I think it's already done that though. Tokyo Drift was basically that.
Well, yeah, exactly. But they didn't call it Fast and Furious, though, did it?
No, well, it was Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
Yeah. Oh, so they still had the label.
And Vin Diesel did show up in that film, albeit in the closing credits as a Sting.
Yeah, right.
And the reaction to that, like that.
Well, there you go. Maybe it is a good example. That's what it's doing.
But I think, and that movie now gets people do like actually say, oh, you know, like Margaret Pomeranz in particular has like a soft spot for that.
Oh, really?
She has a soft spot for all those films, I think. But yeah, this I think this has been like rightfully forgotten. I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, forgotten's probably the wrong word because the very fact that it has the word cult has been used to associate. I mean, it hasn't been forgotten. It's actually been discovered.
I do think. Right, what I stand by with the statement around the film is I think that it is a better movie than it was given credit for when it was released. Having said that, I don't think it's that brilliant a movie.
No.
I just think it had potential and it had areas of promise within it.
Yeah.
And I think it elevates it. So I don't think it deserved to have been shafted the way it should have been.
Yeah.
I think it should have definitely been released. Just call it Season of the Witch, you know. It definitely shouldn't have been, you know, attached to the Halloween franchise stuff because I definitely think that tarnishes.
Yeah, it's definitely a cynical move on the studio's part to just presume that the series has enough cash to kind of.
And even then, like, so I then wonder, like, if you did that, if you stripped away the Halloween kind of component to it and looked at it as a standalone movie today, because we do look back at these kind of movies, does it kind of hold itself up and put itself alongside
still doesn't seem cinematic enough to be like. I still think
we keep going back to it being the TV movie of the week, don't we?
It just even for the times it feels like that rung below what
we've talked about Invitation to Hell, a TV movie with Wes Craven. It's I feel like we're kind of in that same territory, aren't we?
That's probably the closest thing I'd think of. And there was similar themes going on there.
Yeah.
So, do we know if this story was around before he even made Halloween?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I know. I don't know.
It's almost like, you know, you take a script that's pre-existing and you fashion it so it fits within this.
Yeah.
Well, if they didn't do much fashioning with this one, they just put Halloween into the film.
Yeah.
Original Halloween.
Well, that's it. That's right. Yeah.
To remind people, oh yeah, this is that film. But you're right. I think that actually was a bad decision because it just serves to remind people how much better that.
Yeah, I just don't know. I think I get, like, the thing is like I'm all for creative freedom and exploring that kind of stuff. I like the idea, the promise of it being set within the Halloween universe, but it being a different entity, like an anthology thing. I just don't think the execution was done correctly. No. And I think they could have played a lot more with that if they were going to. They needed to keep it within the universe still and not be such a separate entity. I think.
Yeah, like if
for it
the
to
thing
have
is,
worked.
if you sat someone down and started showing this film without them knowing what the name of it was, they would have no idea that it was related to like John Carpenter's Halloween.
That's right.
Until like, you know, maybe 45 minutes in when they see
the movie reference.
What was that?
Yeah. But even then, like modern films today still have kind of like shots of like people, like even John Carpenter does it, you know, in
shots of his own films,
or old films, like, you know, the Thing from Another World is cropped up and things like that. So anyway, look, all right, I think
I would say it's a failed experiment.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you, buddy. I think the promise was there, but it just didn't get the pull off that it was going for.
Just because it's different doesn't mean it's like a cult movie that needs to be like it needs to be higher up. I mean, I'm pretty sure that most of the movie rating websites probably wouldn't give this above like a 5.
Yeah.
And usually, if something's been rediscovered, not that those sites, you know, sometimes you can have a great film that.
No, when you get fan base votes, don't you, that kind of push up the scoring and stuff like that, and so in those, like, you know, Rotten Tomatoes is an example of that. So you can look that up and see that it's the rating of it isn't fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but there you go. I think that concludes our thoughts on and our discussions on this special podcast recording of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. I think we're kind of exhausted as much as we can. So keep an ear out for further podcasts as we continue more of our Halloween franchise discussions. Until then, we are Ben Skinner.
Goodbye.
And your humble host, Paul Farrell. Goodbye. Stop it!
I'd be very surprised.
Stop it!
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. The Halloween franchise. Halloween 3. Season of the Witch. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.